we just want to love everybody all the time. Well, that's not evangelism. I've told you before, you got to make people feel rotten first, then make them feel good. They got to feel bad, and then they know they need to feel good. We're not only not to fellowship, we're to expose it. Now listen, people. You know what's wrong with us in most cases? As Christians, we don't see this contrast as dramatically as God sees it. Just light and darkness. We are just out of that system altogether. But here we are, we're piddling around, playing around with the deeds of darkness. Miles from being a spiritual CIA, from really going after and uncovering evil. We should be so mature and so far along that we can expose evil, that we can search it out and expose it and offer the diagnosis and the cure. But instead, most Christians are barely hanging on to the edge for their own life, let alone trying to deal with somebody else. You say, well, I certainly can't help anybody else get out of this thing till I get over some of my own problems. That's way back, people. You got to take care of that part, and then we ought to be out there really exposing evil. I'll tell you something else. If you're busy exposing evil, it'll have an impact on your own life, right? Sure it will. We are to speak to sinners. We are to tell them it's evil. Why? Look at verse 12. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. I mean, the stuff that they do is so rotten and so wretched and so vile, it isn't even to be spoken about, let alone done, that desperately needs to be reproved. You see, you can't just let it go on. It's evil. It's vile. The things they do are unspeakably evil. And this is the heart of God talking here. And here we are in our world where we're drowning in a sea of media stuff that pumps into us that there's no such thing as evil. And we say, well, it's not so bad. It's evil. It shouldn't even be talked about. It shouldn't even be entertained in a conversation. It's so wretched and it needs to be dealt with and exposed. And yet sometimes, by just turning on your television in your home, you expose your child to a tolerance of the very thing that you shouldn't even talk about. The thing that you should expose as evil. So he says the things that they do in secret are shameful to even talk about. Shouldn't even be talked about. These are wretched things that the world does. And they are to be reproved. They are things too shameful to even speak of, let alone to tolerate. And so he says, look, you are commissioned in this world. You ought to be beyond struggling yourself. Grow up so that you can not only get beyond that hang-up, but that you can be a reprover of others, that you can be one who exposes evil. 4, verse 13, watch this. For all things that are reproved, now watch this is fabulous, are made manifest by the light. In other words, listen, if the light doesn't get on, they'll never be made manifest. You see what he's saying? Anything that is manifest will be manifest by light. For whatever makes manifest is light. And if you're the light and you don't make it manifest, then it won't be made manifest. You see? This is your commission, people. Get out there and reprove sin and expose sin because you're the light, and if you don't do it, it'll never be exposed because it is the light that manifests. Light is that which manifests. And whatever makes manifest is light. People, we've got to realize this. We're back to the basics again. Nobody gets saved unless they come to God repenting of sin. Nobody knows what sin is unless somebody exposes it, right? It is not evangelism to tolerate people and to just love them and never talk about their evil. It is evangelism to make them face the fact of sin. For whatever makes manifest is light. The only hope they have is that the light would shine and make manifest. And so we've got to do it, people. That's why we're the lights of the world. So he says the contrast is clear, darkness and light. The characteristics, if you're going to walk as a child of light, goodness, righteousness, truth. The command don't have anything to do with the things they do. The commission, expose what they do because it's shameful stuff and you're the only light there is to expose it. And then finally he closes. And he closes with an invitation. I guess the Apostle Paul felt there would be some people who would read Ephesians who didn't know Christ. And he wanted to throw an invitation in. And so he says in verse 14, wherefore he saith, and I believe that The he saith here is a reference to Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 1. Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 1, when dealt with from the Hebrew text, conveys the identical thought, although this particular verse gives its fulfillment. Isaiah 60 says, "Arise and shine, for thy light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee." Of course, that looked forward to the Messiah, and this interpretation of it looks back to what Christ has done. And so he says, the prophet says, "Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light." He puts Christ in Isaiah's words because Christ is the fulfillment. May I add this? Most Bible commentators believe that this is a line from an Easter hymn sung by the early church. A line from an Easter hymn. It's an invitation. So the invitation comes to you as it does throughout history. "Awake, thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light." And you have in that one little tiny verse a whole picture of the gospel, a whole little Bible. First, the sinner is described as one who sleeps. And then the summons is offered to awake and arise, and the Savior is presented. Christ shall give thee light. It shows the dilemma of sinfulness. It gives the invitation to the sinner and shows who the Savior is. Like Rip Van Winkle, men are going to sleep through an age, only it won't be an age of history, it'll be an age of grace. And they'll wake up and it'll be too late. And so he says, "Awake, thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light." Light, no more moral darkness, no more intellectual darkness. There is one ray of light, and it's Jesus Christ who said, "I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." Horatio Bonar put it magnificently in these words, "I heard the voice of Jesus say, I am this dark world's light. Look unto me, thy morn shall rise, and all thy day be bright." I came to Jesus, and I found in him my star, my sun. And in that light of life I'll walk, till traveling days are done.
If you're a Christian, you're called to live in such a way that a lost and dying world sees how Christ has changed you and how he can change them. John MacArthur's study is from Ephesians chapters 4 and 5 here on today's Grace to You, and he's showing you how God changes you when he saves you